My ex-wife laughed at my fish. It made me a millionaire. 30 years. Let that number sink in for a second. 30 years. That's how long Gary and I built this company from scratch, starting in my garage back when dial-up internet was still a thing and people actually returned your calls. 30 years of backyard barbecues where we'd burn burgers and dream about making it big. 30 years of Super Bowl parties where we'd argue about whether the Cowboys still had it. 30 years of cheap beer that tasted like ambition and hope. I was his best man at his wedding. Stood right there next to him, holding the rings, watching him promise forever to someone. And he? Well, turns out he was busy making different kind of promises to my wife. Here's how we split the work. I was the heart of our toy company, the creator, the guy with soldering iron in one hand and coffee stains on every shirt I owned, the one who actually made things happen in the real world, not on spreadsheets. Gary was the brain, supposedly, the finance guy, the one in the suits that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill, the one who never got his hands dirty because, well, that's what he had me for. The last 5 years, I practically lived in my workshop, sleeping on a cot some nights, eating takeout over circuit boards. Why? Because I was building our golden ticket, a new line of educational AI drones for kids, smart toys that could actually teach coding, engineering, spatial reasoning. This was going to be my swan song before retirement, my masterpiece, the thing that would finally put us on the map next to Hasbro and Mattel. I poured everything into those drones. Every late night, every weekend, every birthday dinner I missed with Susan. Looking back now, with that perfect 20/20 hindsight that makes you want to punch yourself in the face, I can see all the signs. They were there, bright red flags waving right in front of my face, and I was too buried in resistors and code to notice. The last 6 months, Susan changed. Not in the obvious way you see in movies. No lipstick on collars or mysterious phone calls she'd run outside take. It was subtler than that. Meaner, in a way. She started saying things like, "Mike, you dream too much and think about profit too little." Or, "Mike, we need to be realistic about our future." Coming from the woman who used to love that I chase impossible ideas, that cut deep. But I figure it was just stress. Marriage is work, right? Everybody says that. Then she started with the phone, always glued to it, texting constantly. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she'd say, "Just my sister. She's going through stuff." Her sister lived 2 hours away, and they'd barely spoken in years. But sure, what did I know? I was just the idiot husband building flying robots in the garage. And the Gary thing. Oh, man. The Gary thing should have been the biggest red flag of all. Susan started praising him. Constantly. "Gary's such a realist, Mike. Gary really knows how to protect our money." Gary was saying we should diversify our investments. I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, Gary's great with money. That's why I partnered with him. I didn't realize she was shopping for my replacement while I was literally building our future. You know what's funny? Not haha funny. But that cosmic joke kind of funny? I thought it was just stress. I thought she was worried about money, about our future, about retirement. I was an idiot. No, actually, I was worse than an idiot. I was a trusting idiot, which is basically the final boss level of stupid. One Tuesday evening, they came to me together. Gary, my wife Susan, and a stack of papers so thick you could beat someone to death with it. Actually, looking back, that's pretty much what they did. I was in the workshop, testing a new stabilization algorithm. When they walked in, that should have been weird right there. Susan never came to workshop, said it smelled like burning plastic and broken dreams. Her words, not mine. But that night, there she was, wearing this dress I hadn't seen in years. The one from our anniversary 5 years back. Gary had his briefcase. The fancy leather one. The one he only brought out for serious business. Mike, Gary started using that smooth voice of his. That finance guy voice that could probably sell ice to someone who lives in Igloo. We need to talk about restructuring the company assets. For tax optimization purposes. Tax optimization. Those words should trigger alarm bells in any sane person's head. But I was tired, bone tired. The kind of tired that comes from chasing a dream for 5 straight years while everyone around you thinks you're wasting your time. Susan sat down next to me, actually sat on my lap, which she hadn't done in months. Started pouring whiskey. The good stuff, not the cheap bourbon I usually drank. She was rubbing my shoulders, working those knots that come from hunching over a workbench for 16 hours a day. "It's just a formality, honey," she purred in my ear. "We need to protect your drones from the old company's debts. You don't want to lose them, do you? Not after all this work." And while she was doing this, Gary was flipping through pages, pointing with his stupid manicured finger at little X marks. Sign here, initial here, date this one. Like I was some kind of machine he was programming. They explained the plan, made it sound so reasonable, so logical. We'd create NewCo, a fresh company for the new patents, the drone patents, the future. And OldCo, our original company, would keep all the classic assets, the old inventory, the old trademarks, and, of course, all the old debts. Clean slate, Gary said, smiling like we were all in this together. This protects the innovation from the legacy liabilities. I was an engineer, not a lawyer. That's important to understand. I could build you a drone that could navigate through a window from 50 yards away, but legal documents, they might as well have been written in ancient Egyptian. And more than that, more than anything, I was a man who trusted his best friend of 30 years and his wife of 26. There's a quote I heard once: "Trust is like an eraser. It gets smaller with every mistake." Well, mine was about to disappear completely. I signed every page, every initial, every date. 2 weeks later, my key card didn't work at the office. Just like that. I stood there at the door like some kind of fool, swiping it again and again. The little light stayed red, mocking me. The security guard, Pete, who I'd known for 10 years, who I'd helped move into his new apartment, who I'd loaned $200 to when his car broke down, he wouldn't look me in the eyes, just shook his head and said, "Sorry, Mike, I got orders." That morning, I got an email from Susan's lawyer. Divorce papers. After 26 years of marriage, I got an email with a PDF attachment. Then came the letter from Gary's attorney. Not even Gary himself. His attorney. Turns out that restructuring I signed, it meant I'd voluntarily transferred all the drone patents to NewCo. Every single one. 5 years of work. Every breakthrough. Every innovation. Every late night and missed dinner and weekend in the workshop. All of it now belonged to NewCo, where Gary and Susan were the only shareholders. And me? I was the sole owner of OldCo, a shell company with $300,000 in debt and a portfolio of dead products from the 90s that nobody wanted anymore. Inventory that couldn't sell at a garage sale. They let me come get my stuff from the office. How generous, right? 1 box of personal items from the office I'd worked in for 30 years. They were waiting for me, both of them, standing there like they were expecting me. Gary was wearing this smirk. You know the kind that says, "I won and you lost, and there's nothing you can do about it." He picked up something from my desk, that stupid plastic fish. The singing one, big mouth Billy Bass. Our first big failure back in 1998. We'd ordered 10,000 units, thinking they'd be the next Furby. Sold maybe 200. Lost our shirts on it. Gary tossed it to me like he was throwing trash. "We decided to leave you your masterpiece, Mike." Susan said, actually laughed when she said it. "You own the trademark now. Congratulations. You can hang it in your garage. If the bank doesn't take that too." I stood there holding that fish. This ridiculous plastic-mounted base with its mouth frozen open and its dead glass eyes. In my other hand was a cardboard box with a coffee mug, some photos, and a little wooden nameplate my daughter made me in 3rd grade. 62 years old. That's how old I was standing there. 62 with nothing to show for 3 decades of work except debt and a plastic fish. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Someone's phone rang in another office. Normal office sounds. But everything felt underwater. Distant. Like I was watching this happen to someone else. Gary and Susan walked past me. She didn't even look back. 30 years of friendship. 26 years of marriage. Gone. Just like that. For patents and money, and whatever the hell they'd been doing behind my back. I carried that box out to my truck. My old Ford that had 200,000 miles on it, and made a sound like it was dying every time I started it. Threw the box in the passenger seat. The fish rolled out, landing face up on the floor mat. Those stupid glass eyes stared up at me. Its mouth permanently open in that big dumb smile. Like it was mocking me too. Like it was saying, "Look at you. Look at what you become. You couldn't even see this coming." I drove home to the house that was now just mine. The house I'd probably lose in a divorce. Sat in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could make myself go inside. The workshop light was still on from when they'd ambushed me with papers. I could see it glowing through the garage window. That's when it hit me. Really hit me. Everything I'd built was gone. The company, my marriage, my best friend, my life's work. All of it, carefully, methodically stolen by the two people I trusted most in this world. And all I had left was $300,000 in debt, a garage full of tools, and a plastic fish that wouldn't stop grinning at me with its dead, glassy eyes. The first few months were quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you realize how loud your life used to be. No phone calls except from debt collectors. No emails except from lawyers. No knocks on the door except from people wanting money I didn't have. I lived in that garage. Not metaphorically. Actually lived there. The house felt too big, too empty, too full of memories of a life that turned out to be a lie. So I dragged a sleeping bag into the workshop, set up a hot plate, and made peace with the fact that this was my life now. I'd sit there drinking beer. Not the cheap stuff anymore because, ironically, when you're broke, you stop caring about saving $3 on a six-pack. I'd stare at that fish on the wall. Big mouth Billy Bass. Still grinning. Still mocking me with those dead glass eyes. That fish became something like a shrine to my stupidity. A monument to 30 years of trust that got me nowhere. Sometimes I'd talk to it. Yeah, I know how that sounds. But when you're alone in a garage at 2 a.m. with nothing but debt and regret, a plastic fish starts looking like decent company. I'd say things like, "Well, Billy, what should I do now?" And obviously it didn't answer. Just sat there with that permanent smile, judging me in silence. There's this saying, rock bottom has a basement. Well, I found the basement. Then I found the sub-basement. Then I realized the whole thing was built on quicksand. The debt collectors got creative. First it was phone calls, then letters. Then a guy actually showed up at my door, looking like he'd stepped out of a mob movie. Not threatening, exactly, just disappointed. Like I'd personally let him down by being broke. "Mr. Mike," he said, "we understand you're going through a difficult time, but the debt doesn't care about your feelings. That's America for you. Your wife can cheat on you. Your best friend can steal your life's work. But that debt is forever. That debt will find you in your garage at 3 a.m. eating cereal with a plastic fork because you haven't done dishes in a week." I stopped answering the phone, stopped checking email. Just sat in that garage, surrounded by tools I couldn't afford to use and ideas that didn't matter anymore. Then one day, my grandson showed up. Tommy, 8 years old and full of that energy that makes you remember what it was like to believe the world was good. His mom, my daughter Sarah, had dropped him off because she had errands to run. She didn't come inside. Didn't even look at me. Just a quick wave and gone. I guess she'd picked a side in the divorce. And it wasn't mine. But Tommy didn't care about adult drama. He ran into the garage like it was Disneyland. "Grandpa, can I use your phone? Mine's dead and I want to play games." I handed him my old iPhone, the one with the cracked screen that I kept meaning to fix, but never did because, well, what was the point? He started messing with Siri. Kids these days, they expect everything to be smart, everything to respond, everything to entertain them. "Hey, Siri." Tommy yelled at the phone, "Tell me a joke." And Siri, in that flat, robotic voice, said, "Here's what I found on the web for, tell me a joke." Tommy's face fell. That's so boring. Why can't she just be funny? Then he tried again. Hey Siri, why are you so lame? I'm not sure I understand. Tommy threw the phone on my workbench in disgust. She's useless, Grandpa. She can't even be mean back. She's just boring. And that's when it hit me. Not like a gentle realization, like an electric shock, like touching a live wire, which I'd done plenty of times back in the 80s when safety standards were more like safety suggestions. The problem with Siri, with Alexa, with all these digital assistants, they're useful, sure. They can tell you the weather, set timers, play music, but they have the personality of oatmeal, plain oatmeal, without sugar, without anything. They're tools, functional, boring. And I looked up at that fish on the wall. That stupid, ridiculous, absurd plastic fish. The one that sang, "Take me to the river," in the most annoying way possible. The one we'd failed to sell in 1998 because it was too weird, too dumb, too much a novelty that wore off after 5 minutes. But that was it. That weirdness, that absurdity, that was character. What if the fish wasn't just dumb? What if it was smart and sarcastic? What if it had personality? Tommy had already lost interest and was poking around my old circuit boards, but my brain was firing on all cylinders for the first time in months. The fog that had been sitting on my thoughts since the divorce started lifting. See, here's the thing about being an engineer. Gary could steal my patents. Susan could take my house. The lawyers could take my money. But they couldn't take what was in my head. They couldn't take the 30 years of experience building things, fixing things, making things work. I stood up so fast, I knocked over a half-empty beer can. Tommy looked at me like I'd lost it. Maybe I had. Tommy, I need you to go play outside for a bit. Grandpa's got to work. The second he left, I was at my workbench, hands moving on autopilot, brain already 3 steps ahead. I had an old Raspberry Pi computer sitting in a drawer. You know, those little credit card-sized computers that hobbyists use. $40, less computing power than a modern phone, but enough, more than enough for what I needed. I grabbed the fish off the wall, laid it on the workbench like a surgeon preparing for an operation. The stupid piece of plastic and motors that represented everything I'd lost. I was about to turn it into something else entirely. First, I pried open the back panel. The original mechanics from the 90s were laughably simple. A basic motor to move the head, another for the mouth, a small speaker that sounded like it was underwater even when new, all of it controlled by a circuit board that probably had less processing power than a microwave. I tore it all out. No ceremony, no sentiment. Just ripped out the guts of this thing and tossed them in my scrap bin. Then I got to work installing the new stuff. The Raspberry Pi, a better microphone, new servos that moved smooth and quiet instead of like an old screen door, a decent speaker. I was soldering, crimping wires, testing connections. For the first time in months, I felt alive. My hands weren't shaking. My mind wasn't wandering to lawyers and divorce papers and debt collectors. I was doing what I did best. Building something, creating something, making something that didn't exist before. Hours passed. I forgot about lunch, forgot about the collectors, forgot about everything except this fish and what it could become. The physical part was easy. That was just engineering. But the hard part, the magic part, that was the programming. I needed to give this thing a brain, not just any brain, a personality. See, by this point, ChatGPT had an API, an application programming interface, for you non-nerds. Basically, it meant I could connect my little fish computer to one of the most advanced AI systems in the world for like $20 a month. $20 a month to access technology that would have seemed like science fiction when I built my first toy in the 70s. Technology that could hold conversations, understand context, generate responses that seemed almost human. But here's what most people don't understand about AI. It's only as good as the instructions you give it. You can't just plug it in and expect magic. You have to teach it who it is, what it's supposed to be, how it should act. I spent a week on this. A full week barely sleeping, barely eating, just coding and testing and refining. I created what programmers call a system prompt. Basically, instructions that tell the AI how to behave. And I got specific, real specific. I told it, you are Big Mouth Billy Bass. You're a singing fish trophy from 1998. You've seen everything. You've hung on garage walls through divorces, deaths, celebrations, and failures. You're like Frank Sinatra if he was a fish. You've got that same smooth voice, but you're also bitter, sarcastic, and tired of everyone's nonsense. You're stuck on a wall in a garage in Ohio. You can't move except your head and mouth. You hate it. You're mildly drunk. You philosophize about life. And you're forced to answer whatever stupid questions people ask you. I kept refining it, making it sharper, more specific, more Billy. The AI needed to understand that Billy wasn't trying to be helpful. He was trying to survive with dignity in an undignified situation. He wasn't Siri. He wasn't there to make your life easier. He was there to tell you the truth, even if the truth hurt. Finally, on day 7, at about 2 a.m, I mounted the fish back on the wall, connected everything, powered it on, watched the little LED lights blink to life inside. My hands were actually shaking, not from fear, from excitement, from possibility, from a first real hope I'd felt since signing those papers. I took a breath, looked at that fish, those same glass eyes, that same ridiculous smile. But now there was something different. Now there was potential. Billy, I said. My voice came out rough. I cleared my throat. Tried again. Billy, what's the meaning of life? For a second, nothing happened. My heart sank. Another failure. Another thing that didn't work. Story of my life. Then slowly, the fish's head turned toward me. The servos moved smooth. Quiet. Professional. The mouth open, not with a jerky motion of the old mechanics, but natural, almost alive. And then it spoke. The voice came out perfect. Exactly what I'd programmed. That crooner quality. That tired, seen-it-all tone. Like a lounge singer at the end of a long night in a nearly empty bar. The meaning of life? You're sitting in a garage at 2 a.m. talking to a plastic fish. Looks like you already found your meaning, pal. Now let me sleep. I got an imaginary migraine. I didn't laugh right away. First, I just stared, mouth open, brain trying to process what I'd just heard. Then it hit me, really hit me. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. The laugh started small, just a chuckle, then bigger. Then I was full-on laughing, the kind of laugh that comes from your gut and won't stop, the kind that makes your sides hurt and your eyes water. I laughed until I was crying. Couldn't tell if I was laughing or crying or both. Didn't matter, because I had it. I had something real, something new, something that nobody else had. Not just a toy, not just a novelty. I had a character. I had a personality that people would actually want to talk to, that they'd pay money for, that would make them laugh and think and come back for more. I asked it another question. Billy, my wife left me. The fish turned its head slightly. Yeah? Well, at least she had legs. I've been stuck on this wall since the 90s. You want sympathy, call your mother. I laughed again. Harder this time. Billy, I'm broke. Join the club, buddy. I'm a discontinued toy from 1998. My original manufacturer went bankrupt, but you don't see me complaining. Well, actually, that's all I do. But at least I'm honest about it. Perfect. Every response was perfect. I stayed up all night talking to that fish, testing it, pushing it, seeing what it could do. And the more I talked to it, the more I realized what I had. This wasn't just about making a smarter Alexa. This was about giving people something they actually wanted to interact with, something that felt real, even though it was completely artificial, something that told the truth instead of just being helpful. People are tired of helpful. Helpful is boring. Helpful is a tool. But character? Personality? That's entertainment. That's connection. That's something people will pay for. Gary took my drones. Fine. Those were going to be educational tools. Useful. Functional. They probably would have made decent money. But this was different. This was magic. The sun started coming up. I could see light creeping under the garage door. Birds started singing. The world was waking up, and for the first time in months, I wanted to be part of it. I had $300,000 in debt. No wife, no company, no prospects. But I had a sarcastic plastic fish with artificial intelligence and the personality of a drunk lounge singer from the 50s. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like enough. That felt like a new beginning. I didn't run to Kickstarter like some 25-year-old with a dream and a Twitter following. Didn't beg banks that would laugh me out of their marble lobbies. I did what I do best. I built a working prototype. And I made one video. Just one, but it was perfect. The video was simple. Me in my garage, workbench visible behind me, looking exactly like what I was, a 62-year-old engineer who'd been through hell and come out the other side with something nobody else had. I asked the fish a question. Billy, what do you think about my former business partner, Gary? The fish turned its head, paused for effect. Then in that tired crooner voice, Gary? Guy's got the charisma of a wet napkin and the moral compass of piranha. Speaking of piranhas, that reminds me. And then it started singing Mac the Knife in this perfect Bobby Darin impression. I didn't post it on TikTok. Didn't throw it up on YouTube hoping for views. That's what amateurs do. I went straight to the top. I found the personal email addresses of 3 people. Vice presidents of product development at Hasbro, Mattel, and Spin Master. The big 3. The companies that make billions selling plastic to kids and nostalgia to adults. Subject line, your AI assistant is boring. Body of email, mine isn't. Watch this. Then I attach the video and hit send at exactly 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. Business hours, when executives are drinking their first coffee and actually checking email. My phone started blowing up 20 minutes later. 20 minutes. That's all it took for the VP at Hasbro to watch a 1-minute video and realize what he was looking at. Not just a toy, not just a gimmick, a whole new category of product. The VP at Mattel called 30 minutes after that. Spin Master came in at the 45-minute mark. They all wanted it. They all wanted Billy. But here's the thing. I'd learned my lesson. I'd signed papers without reading them. I'd trusted people I shouldn't have. I'd been the nice guy, the team player, the engineer who just wanted to build cool stuff and let other people handle the business side. That version of Mike died in a conference room with a stack of papers and a cheating wife. This version understood something Gary never did. Money isn't power. Leverage is power. I had something they wanted, something none of them could replicate. Sure, they could build their own AI fish, but they couldn't use Big Mouth Billy Bass. That trademark belonged to me. That nostalgia, that brand recognition, that was mine. And without it, they just had another talking gadget in a market flooded with talking gadgets. I needed a lawyer, not just any lawyer, the best intellectual property attorney I could find. Problem was, I was broke. Still had that $300,000 in debt hanging over my head like a sword. Couldn't afford a $1,000 retainer, let alone the rates these guys charged. So I did something crazy. I printed out the email chains. All of them. Hasbro, Mattel, Spin Master. All these executives basically begging me for a meeting. I printed the video stills showing Billy in action. I put it all in a folder. Then I walked into the office of Richard Chun, the most expensive IP lawyer in the state. The guy who'd represented major corporations in patent disputes worth hundreds of millions. The guy whose hourly rate was probably more than my monthly mortgage used to be. His secretary tried to stop me. No appointment. No retainer. No chance. I told her to tell Mr. Chun I had a case that was already won. I just needed someone to collect the money. 5 minutes later, I was in his office. Corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows. View of downtown that probably cost more per month than my entire house. Richard Chun was mid-50s, perfectly tailored suit, and the kind of confidence that comes from never losing. He looked at me like I was wasting his time. I put the folder on his desk. Didn't say anything. Just opened it and played the video on my phone. He watched Billy insult Gary and break into a Bobby Darin song. Watched it twice. Then he looked at the emails. Read them carefully. Every single one. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. A shark smile. He said, I'll take 30% of the deal. I love cases that are already won. We set up the first meeting with Hasbro in a hotel conference room downtown. Neutral ground. Professional setting. Their VP showed up with 2 lawyers and a financial analyst. They had spreadsheets, market projections, cost analyses, the whole corporate playbook. The VP shook my hand like we were old friends. Mike, we're excited about this partnership. We see huge potential. We're prepared to offer you $5 million. Right now, today, for full rights. I smiled, took a sip of the coffee they brought in, let the moment breathe. Richard leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. I said, $5 million? Gentlemen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. You're not buying. You're licensing. The VP blinked. Sorry? You're licensing my trademark. Big Mouth Billy Bass. That brand, that recognition, that belongs to me. You're also licensing my proprietary AI personality system. I'm calling it Sassy AI. And here's the deal. $10 million up front, plus 20% royalty on every unit sold. The room went silent. Their lawyer actually laughed. That's absurd. Nobody gets 20% royalties. Richard pulled out his phone, pulled up the email from Mattel. Read it out loud. We're very interested in discussing exclusive rights. Name your terms. Then he showed them the one from Spin Master. Similar language. Richard said, my client has 3 major toy companies competing for this. 20% isn't absurd. It's the opening offer. The Hasbro team called me crazy. Said the numbers didn't work. Said nobody would agree to those terms. They packed up their spreadsheets and left. Richard ordered more coffee. 2 days later, Mattel came back with a counteroffer. 18% royalties. $12 million up front. I said no. Richard called Hasbro. Told them Mattel was at 18% and $12 million. Asked if they wanted to revise their thinking. Hasbro came back the next day. 20%. $15 million up front. They wanted this. They wanted it bad enough to break their own rules. We signed the deal on a Friday afternoon. $15 million wired to an escrow account. 20% of every Billy Bass unit sold in perpetuity. Richard took his 30%, worth every penny. I went home that night, back to my garage, opened a bottle of whiskey that cost more than my first car. The kind of whiskey you save for moments that only come once in a lifetime. I sat there in the quiet, sipping expensive whiskey, looking at that empty spot on the wall where Billy used to hang. For the first time in a year, I slept like a baby, deep, dreamless, the kind of sleep you only get when the weight finally lifts off your chest. Then I woke up to an email from Gary's lawyer. They were suing me, not for the trademark. They knew they'd signed that away. The paperwork was clear. Big Mouth Billy Bass belonged to Oldco, which meant it belonged to me. But they were claiming the AI system, the software, the personality, all of that was a derivative work, based on the drone navigation AI I developed while still technically employed by the original company. They wanted my software. They wanted my royalties. They wanted to take this away from me, just like they'd taken everything else. The lawsuit was 50 pages of legal language that basically said, Mike built this AI using knowledge and techniques he developed while working on our drones, therefore belongs to us. I called Richard, told him about the suit. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, this is going to get expensive and nasty. They're smart. This isn't about the fish. This is about the money. They saw the Hasbro deal. Now they want a piece. How bad? I asked. Richard sighed. If they can prove the AI is derivative of your drone work, they might have a case. It's technical enough that a judge might not understand the distinction. We're going to trial. Probably 6 months. Maybe longer. The weight came crashing back. I'd won. I'd actually won. And now, they were dragging me back to hell. The trial took 9 months. 9 months of depositions. Expert witnesses. Technical demonstrations. Both sides bringing in AI researchers and software engineers to explain why this was or wasn't derivative work. Gary and Susan showed up looking confident. They burned through their savings on legal fees, but they didn't care. They thought they were going to win. They thought they were going to take my second chance just like they'd taken my first. Their lawyer gave this long presentation about intellectual property, about how all creative work builds on previous work, about how the AI I'd built was fundamentally similar to the navigation systems I developed for the drones. Richard let him talk, let him lay out his whole case. Charts, diagrams, code comparisons. Then Richard stood up. He pulled out the restructuring agreement, the one I'd signed that terrible Tuesday night. Found Section 4.b. He read it out loud for the court. Old code retains all legacy trademarks, including but not limited to Big Mouth Billy Bass. All associated rights transfer to Michael Patterson. He looked at Gary and Susan. You gave him that trademark. Yourselves. It's in the contract you wrote. Thank you for that. Their lawyer interrupted. We're not disputing the trademark. We're disputing the software. Richard smiled. Right. The software. You're claiming that a sarcastic chatbot connected to a publicly available API, ChatGPT-4, is a derivative work of proprietary closed-source drone navigation system? Let me break this down. Drone navigation is about getting from point A to point B, obstacle avoidance, spatial reasoning, real-time environmental mapping. That's what my client built for your drones. This AI, this is about personality, character, conversational flow, humor. These are completely different technologies, different code bases, different purposes, different everything. The only thing they have in common is that the same person invented them. But my client created this AI in his garage, on his own time, after you terminated him. That's not derivative work. That's a new invention. It belongs to him 100%. The judge listened to both sides, looked at the code, brought in his own expert to review everything. He ruled in my favor, completely, dismissed the suit with prejudice, meaning they couldn't try again, and ordered Gary and Susan to pay my legal fees. $75,000. Gary's face went white. Susan started yelling about how this was unfair, how I'd stolen from them, how they'd built that company. The judge banged his gavel, told her to be quiet or he'd hold her in contempt. Nuco went bankrupt 6 months later. Turns out Gary was great at stealing ideas, but terrible at generating new ones. The educational drones never took off. Too expensive, too complicated, too late to market. Other companies had already filled that space with cheaper alternatives. They lost everything. The company, their house, their savings, all of it gone. Meanwhile, AI Billy Bass became the hottest toy of the year. Hasbro couldn't keep them in stock. Every electronics store, every toy store, sold out in days. They were shipping 100,000 units a week and still couldn't keep up with demand. My royalty checks started coming in. 20% of every unit. 20% of millions of units. First check was for $1.2 million. Second check was for $2.1 million. By the end of the year, I'd made $14 million in royalties alone. Then came the New York Toy Fair, the biggest trade show in the industry, where every major retailer, every distributor, every player in the toy business comes to see what's next. Hasbro gave us the biggest booth at the show, center of the main hall. You couldn't miss it. Giant Billy Bass displays, interactive demos, screens showing customer reviews and sales numbers. Toy of the Year. That's what they were calling it. The comeback story everyone wanted to hear about. I was sitting at a table in the booth, signing European distribution deals, expanding into Asia, licensing deals for different versions. Billy Bass for cars, Billy Bass for offices, Billy Bass for smart homes. Then I saw them, Gary and Susan, walking through the convention center, looking lost, looking old. Gary had gained weight, wore a cheap suit that didn't fit right. Susan's hair was gray. Her clothes were off the rack. They looked exactly like what they were. People who'd gambled everything and lost. They saw me, saw the booth, saw the success, the crowds, the cameras, the money. They pushed through the crowd, came right up to my table. Gary's voice shook when he spoke. Mike, we need to talk. I looked at him, didn't say anything, just looked. He continued. We made mistakes. We know that now. We're bankrupt. Susan's been sick. We can't afford her treatments. We need help. We need a loan, just for old time's sake. I felt something strange. Not anger, not satisfaction, just emptiness, like looking at strangers. Behind me on the wall hung 10 golden Billy bass units. My advisory board, I called them, each one programmed with a slightly different personality. My board of directors who never lied to me. I said, this is a serious financial decision. I should consult with my board. I pressed a button. All 10 fish turned their heads toward Gary and Susan. Synchronized. Perfectly timed. One started playing Don't Worry, Be Happy in that crooner voice. Another one said, Alone? Buddy, you look like a country song written on a Monday morning. The answer is no. Now get lost. You're ruining my feng shui. The others chimed in with various sarcastic comments about bad investments and past mistakes. Gary and Susan just stood there, broken, humiliated, while a chorus of plastic fish roasted them in front of a crowd of toy industry executives who'd started filming on their phones. They turned and left, pushed back through the crowd, and disappeared. I never saw them again. Last I heard, Gary worked security at a big box store. Night shift. I heard he works at a toy store, actually. Probably walks past Billy bass displays every night. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's served in plastic, and sometimes it sings.